To everyone from the main powerful rank, good morning, good morning. Well, so this morning, for those who already have daytime, most likely we will talk about the situation at the front and about how the mutual strikes are developing, Russia's strikes on Ukraine and vice versa. There is something to discuss there. And so, before we start, I'll show you a wonderful cup that you can start the morning with coffee. And there's also a wonderful t-shirt, this kind too, which wishes everyone from the main rank well. In short, for everyone from the main who wants it, there will be merch in the description, and right now a link will also appear here about the t-shirt and the cup. Well, let's get started. Look, Syrski, the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine, was interviewed, and he stated that an attack on the Chernihiv region is possible and in fact probably on Chernihiv itself. Let's listen to what exactly he has to say, because a very interesting situation is developing here. Okay, let's bring the journalist back to the base as well. Everyone's camouflage net looks great. You should definitely blend in at the studio. If you haven't camouflaged yourself in the studio, some drone might show up, and then what? I don't know. Having a net in the studio is definitely funny.
That Putin gave a task to the Russian general staff.
Syrski is trying his best to speak Ukrainian, but what comes out is something that I think everyone will understand.
To calculate different options for launching an offensive operation, including from the territory of Belarus, and also with the goal of capturing Kiev.
By the way, today Lukashenko stated that under no circumstances will Belarus get involved in the war. And he says that, as you think, Belarus was involved at the dawn of the war in 2022 when Russia attacked Ukraine. This is a bit of a different situation. He promised to tell someday what really happened at the very beginning. That, of course, would be interesting to hear.
There was the seizure of other territories, and the Russian general staff allowed for several courses of action. But how realistic are they? Well, considering recent events, I don't think the leadership of Belarus will dare to use their own territory and get involved.
So in other words, Belarusi Syrski says that most likely they won't participate either. And by the way, he made an interesting statement. He said that those very repeaters that were monitoring military equipment in Ukraine actually haven't been turned off. This all contradicts what Zelensky said. Well, anyone who knows this government understands that the right hand doesn't know what the left is doing, and one hand can, that's from a different story.
For use and as a staging ground for conducting an offensive operation. At the same time, of course, we are taking into account the conduct of an offensive operation. At the same time, we are also considering that option. The most likely scenario, and this is supported by several indications, is an offensive in the north from Russian territory, from the Bryansk region. This is a realistic scenario, and of course we are preparing for it.
An offensive from the Bryansk region in the north of Ukraine. Accordingly, Syrski suspects an offensive. So, that's how things are. What about the Sloviansk direction? Things aren't great there either. The situation is becoming increasingly difficult for the armed forces of Ukraine. They write that in the Sloviansk direction there are problems in the area of Krivaya Luka. Zakitne is still holding on, but according to the military observer, this could lead to a tragedy. Why? Because the military is trapped on one side by the river and on the other by advancing Russian forces. No logistics remain there, and fighting continues in Alexandrovka's south, east, and center. And he says that without strengthening the positions and withdrawing certain units that are holding specific points on the map, there will be a retreat to the Sloviansk thermal power plant. Then came the evacuation of the Sloviansk-Kramatorsk area and the beginning of direct battles for both cities. The problem is that all of these are fortress cities, but there are no fortresses behind them. There, the situation is not as difficult for offensive operations, at least as it is in this agglomeration, which has been built up over many years. But here, if they break through this point or this line, it will be much easier to advance further. That's why the military is worried. Additionally, they report that during Russian troop movements near Zakotnoye yesterday, military observer Deep State confirmed the events. A map of the actions was published. On top of that, the Russians are advancing toward Nikolaevsk, which is one of the key settlements of Nikolaevka, and in several other cities in general. It's all complicated as well. Here, the areas where Russian forces entered are shown in gray, and the areas where they are already present are shown in red. Then it's confirmed here as well. Military correspondent Bogdan Miroshnikov notes a serious deterioration of the situation in several areas at once. He says that action is needed in several sectors. The same map is shown here as well. But in general, something really needs to be done here. If everything continues to drag on the way it is now, it could really lead to a disaster for the AFU. And here, it's not my clickbait headlines that some of you complain about, but the real situation. Then there are also problems with Zelensky and his, how should I put it, Ukrainian language public figures, former associates and current ones. For example, Zaluzhny announced his desire to participate in the elections. Just imagine, President Zaluzhny. I can only imagine what a wonderful president he would be. Probably with the same leadership qualities and everything else as Zelensky. But in general, I think that no matter who you choose, everything will be great. Another competitor could be Budanov. By the way, there were recent polls and other survey work were conducted. Among the Ukrainian population, they asked who would support which potential president. It turned out that 33 respondents support the powerful Zelensky. And here, a lot of questions arise about who was surveyed, how they were surveyed, and how all of this was analyzed. Because earlier, more, let's say, or rather less official data showed that the situation there was completely different. Here, Zelensky is shown with 33% support, while earlier he had 70% or even 75% backing. Apparently, he succeeded in his aspirations to win the elections and decided to actually hold them. Here, several anonymous sources suggest that elections will be held soon. Everything has reached the point where Zelensky even held a meeting with Valery Zaluzhny at the state residence on Bankova Street in Kiev. He is Ukraine's ambassador to the United Kingdom. You have seen him at the beginning of the video where he said, good morning to all the mighty ones, or rather, gur morning. The original pronunciation was preserved. That's what he said. He was called in from London for a meeting. They literally pulled the ambassador out, and he had to go travel to Ukraine. Not long before the current Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Keir Starmer, announced his resignation, another talented leader. After discussing the situation with Starmer, Zelensky moved on to the topic of elections in Ukraine and stated that the situation at the front has been developing positively lately. Society remains quite consolidated, which means that there is now a window of opportunity to hold presidential elections. Here an immediate question arises. So it turns out that it wasn't the war that was the obstacle before, but rather the lack of consolidation in society. Apparently one side didn't want to elect Zelensky, while the other side, represented by the powerful barbershop troops, apparently did. They wanted to keep seeing him. Well, and again, I mean, if you're saying this now, well, that's it. Well, they were pushing one line, one particular view, that it's impossible to hold presidential elections during a war. Well, they could have come up with some kind of exception. Like, I don't know, that they agreed with Russia to freeze the front line during the elections or something like that. But here, well, society is united. So you ruined it yourselves. I was watching Servant of the People just yesterday. They showed a little clip that was just perfect, like you yourselves predicted what would happen, and it perfectly showed how you could make the West and East quarrel. To some they say that language is a weapon, that you have to speak Ukrainian. To others they say that the Russian language is being oppressed, which is actually true. Looking at what's happening now in Ukraine, that there's oppression of Russian culture and all sorts of things like that, well, in the end, that's what it comes down to. Plus religion, plus war. In general, thanks to Poroshenko and Zelensky for our happy future. It's just, okay, we got distracted. What happened next? In the end, the president directly asked the former commander-in-chief, if the elections are held in the fall, will you run? And according to the sources of Ukrainska Pravda, he received a clear answer, yes, I will. At the same time, Zelensky was ready to discuss almost any government position with Zaluzhny. Presumably, this was to keep him from running for president. But after he said that he would run for president, Zelensky was no longer willing to discuss anything. He was offended. The former commander-in-chief himself explained that he was not seeking a political career, but many people you see are placing their hopes on him. It's just like those barbershop guys say. Well, I was so eager to get to the front, I really wanted to tear the enemy apart with my teeth. But the guys, every other one of them says, the guys, my friends who are at the front said, well, There's Vasya, Zhora, Kolya, Sveta, it doesn't matter, there are a million of them, really, their name is Legion. These barbershop guys, they say, we need you in the rear, you're so strong, come on Vasya, go ahead. And in the end, who gets exempted from mobilization? All kinds of singers and little pop starlets, so to speak. Those clowns from the traveling circus, why are they needed in the rear? What are they doing? Why are they so necessary? It's absolutely impossible to understand. Some people, like Tuki, have sore knees. He said his pain lasted 2 weeks. He also mentioned fighting with the guys in the basements, but I never understood what that was about. And then his joints started hurting, and well, time to retire, even though at that time he wasn't 60 yet. Now, for some reason, Tuka doesn't want to go to the front. Well, that's how it is, even though there's a contract for those over 60. Alright, anyway, my point is that all these mighty types keep saying that someone is telling them they're needed somewhere, including Zaluzhny. Zaluzhny's popularity has long since faded because out of sight, out of mind, as they say. But he apparently still thinks that now, well, in my opinion, Zelensky is even less likely to be chosen as president. So basically, the meeting ended after Zaluzhny said, yes, I will run. And then two wonderful people, Umarov and Arakamia, also met with him. They repeated Zelensky's arguments about a possible split in society if Zaluzhny suddenly runs in the elections. And do you know what they said as a farewell? Brother, just think about it some more. I can just imagine how these two broad Ukrainians in broad Ukrainian language told Zaluzhny, brother, just think about it, brother. Come on, brother, that's life. Yes. What's going on? Honestly, this political elite, they look more like market traders from the kind of place we used to hang out at in the 90s. They say Zaluzhny's approval rating remains high, but it no longer shows the same momentum it had right after he was dismissed as Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine in February 2024. And Zelensky held another meeting where they discussed whether to hold presidential elections and if so, when and who would participate in them. But it's obvious who can participate in elections in Ukraine. Someone just walked in from outside and suddenly decided to join the elections like it's nothing. Well, it's clear that it'll be Budanov, Zelensky, Zaluzhny, who else? Beletsky from Azov, maybe someone else, a couple of strong leaders. Zelensky's popularity has shown it's officially clear. According to the calculations, 33% Zaluzhny has 22%, Budanov has 14%. But in the second round, according to the poll results, the potential president would win against Zelensky with a score of 37 to 32%, so that's how things are. If Zaluzhny comes, there will be one powerful victory in the future and the military will finally take control of Ukraine. After that, will the country start to prosper? How will it blossom? How will it smell? Oh my goodness, there will be quite a scent. Alright, now about the strikes. Last night, Ukrainian drones, we're told, reached Ufa and Penza. An important military plant and an oil refinery were hit by Ukrainian long-range drones. For the second time, they reached the oil refinery in Ufa and a strategic enterprise of the Russian military-industrial complex in the Penza region. Both facilities are located hundreds, if not 1,000 kilometers from the front line. But here it is shown that this is happening to us. This was launched by Zelensky. In general, that's what's happening. A drone struck it.
In Penza.
Well, that's how things are. So he showed it, and then he also stated that in the morning drones attacked 2 sites. Well, actually, the Ufa oil refinery is about 1,350 kilometers away, and also microelectronics production at the Nifi enterprise in Penza, 600 kilometers away. So that's what happened. Plus, the Saki airfield in Crimea was hit, and Su-30 fighter jets were struck. The security service carried out this strike. And of course, it's part of the 40-day operation to influence Russia, which the security service of Ukraine is carrying out on Zelensky's orders. In short, Zelensky is really, the jade rod that holds this whole thing together, this entire military campaign. At the same time, in Ukraine, they are promising power outages. The hot days have started, which I mentioned earlier. Well, that's especially for the officials, in case they don't look out the window. And it's been stated that, of course, there's no panic. There may be reasons, but there could be power outages for up to 6 hours a day. At the same time, this will mainly happen during the evening peak hours, right when people come home from work or school. And right away, let's turn off the power. Sit there in the dark, in the heat, do whatever you want. This is happening while in several regions of Ukraine the temperature has exceeded 50 degrees that has never happened before. And here we go again. As they say, well, that's really an extreme temperature. It hasn't happened before. So what now? Now we have powerful leaders. Here, Deputy Serko is saying that we're going to shake up Russia now. That is, well, she's going to shake it up, obviously, without Ukrainian support. By the way, she used to express pretty reasonable ideas in opposition to that whole clique. And she wasn't a hawk. But now you see she's another one who wants to shake up Russia. Demolition girl, so to speak. That's right. What's her name? Serko. And now she's going to tell us how to shake things up.
It happens inside Russia where problems are bigger and more dangerous than for Putin. They've lost their money and their country. They've lost the people. He's useless now, and he lost the war too.
You know, in Ukrainian, my dad is a spy. That's a joke, by the way. My dad has a radio. But actually, in Ukrainian, mati ratsiu means to be right. So if you mati ratsiu, you're right. But it sounds interesting.
Just imagine, they will have to surrender and give us 548 billion. And after that, what will they do next? We'll tear them apart and take all their oil. We can take the money from the oil.
Oh, and she'll take the money from the oil, then apparently she'll live in Valdai herself, this Serko woman. In short, the butchers are flying in planes, we'll bomb, as Zelensky said. Then we also have, this Omalyansha, General Umelchenko appeared again. For some reason, the Ukrainian flag disappeared from his wall. And this wonderful person is being interviewed by Dasha Shasliva. Well, let's listen.
A wonderful day, or one wonderful night, when about 5,000 or 7,000 unemployed ones will fly to Crimea, drones.
We need 30,000 right away, 2 million are ready, and a few more, no, 200,000 are on the way, and 3 million are coming soon.
All of these will have combat charges, and with such charges that, as they say, it's no joke. Out of goodwill, as the Ukrainian general tells you, while the Crimean city is still breathing and trucks can still drive through it, those who transport people should get the hell out of the beach, out of Crimea. This is your chance to save your life. This is your chance to save your life.
That's how it is. The ex-general says that you need to get out of Crimea by any means possible. Then the show, who else do we have? This guy who is constantly building up his facial muscles, obviously to be a more talented speaker. Now he's wearing a Canadian lumberjack's shirt, has a Canadian lumberjack's beard, but he's in a Ukrainian deputy's car. What is a Canadian lumberjack clown doing in a Ukrainian deputy's car? It's really impossible to understand, but he's being interviewed. His name is Guy. He's being interviewed. His name is Guy.
Well, partly, starting about an hour ago, information began to spread actively that in different regions of the Russian Federation, so-called raids have started. Men are being caught on the streets and forced to drink.
So-called raids? There aren't any. In Luhansk, everything is being filmed.
That's how it is. In the end, what might happen? With this mobilization, for example, these raids, could uprisings or riots start in Russia? Or in the end, are they as a nation simply incapable of that?
Look, right now they have a huge budget deficit. They're facing a catastrophe with regional budgets, and soon they simply won't be able to pay this money anymore. So it's easier for them to mobilize people than to pay the millions they do now. Soon they won't be able to due to the catastrophe they're facing. There might be a rebellion.
A rebellion? A rebellion? Well, maybe, or maybe there won't be a rebellion, or maybe there will be a rebellion. It's like a joke about the chances of meeting a dinosaur on the street. You go outside, but you might meet one or you might not. It's 50-50. Of course, the statistical margin of error should also take into account the probability of a dinosaur existing in our time. But this, I repeat, is a joke, not some mathematical speculation about the realities of our existence. My existence, so what? And let's show this Cossack, this one. The further they go, the tougher warriors with dumplings they show. Well, this is just, well, what is this? Alright, let's listen. He says it's not scary at the front. Well, who would know better than this character?
Many people have fears and Russian propaganda is spreading. What else should be explained and how do you do it?
You are right. The enemy's propaganda has done its job. They all believe that we only have human wave assaults here, and that people who end up with us won't last long, that they will definitely die. By joining these technological battalions, they can defeat the enemy without facing total danger themselves.
The robots are working, a man says happily, a specialist in fighting borscht and dumplings, but of course we believe him. People aren't needed at the front. Robots are fighting at the front. Robotic tanks, platforms, drones, and whoever else is fighting there. They use whatever weapons they can, just not people. Assault troops and infantry aren't needed at all. Why would you need them? They're unnecessary. So let's hope that the front line turns into this kind of laser robotic line without any people at all. We could recall various science fiction stories here, but we won't. Well, that's all for now. What else is there to say? Elections are coming up, the war continues, and the country is economically thriving. And the deeper into the woods, the thicker the partisans, or rather, not partisans, but these so-called pseudo-fighters and real fighters. Goodbye, everyone.
Let's suppose there's some position that two people want to take. Moreover, this position requires knowledge, some experience, and so on, and both of them have the same qualifications. Everything else is the same. One is decent, the other a scoundrel. So, who gets the position? Of course, the scoundrel, because he'll do what the decent person won't. And of course, he will make it through. And the conclusion is, the higher the level of management, the more scoundrels there are.